You stand at the edge of a vast, silent continent. Not the kind drawn on any paper map of the world, but the one that has always lived inside you. It stretches farther than any ocean, rises higher than any mountain you have ever seen, and holds secrets older than your first memory. This is the landscape of your own mind. And right now, in this quiet moment, you are being called to explore it. Most people never answer that call. They live their entire lives wandering the same narrow trails they learned as children, never questioning the borders that hem them in. They believe the maps they were given are complete. The voices that whisper, "This is who you are, this is what you can have, this is how far you may go," feel like solid ground. Yet, those voices are only faint pencil lines sketched long ago by fear, habit, and half-remembered stories. Beyond them lie blank spaces, enormous blank spaces, and in those blank spaces, true freedom waits. You already feel the pull, don't you? That quiet restlessness that sometimes rises when the day grows still. The sense that something larger lies just beneath the surface of your ordinary thoughts. It is the same feeling ancient explorers must have known when they stared at the edges of their known world and saw the words, "Here be dragons." Those dragons were never real monsters. They were simply the unknown. And the unknown has always been the doorway to every great discovery. Your mind is no different. Its dragons are the shadows you have refused to look at, the emotions you have never fully mapped, the beliefs that still quietly shape every choice you make. They guard the deeper territories where your real power lives. Until you walk toward them with a steady heart and an open notebook, those dragons will keep drawing the borders of your life for you. This book is your field guide for that journey. Mental cartography is not a set of clever techniques or a list of affirmations. It is the deliberate, sacred art of becoming an explorer of your own inner world. Most people never take the first step because the familiar trails feel safer. They stay within the known territory of their old maps. Maps that were drawn by parents, teachers, culture, old wounds, and the endless noise of modern life. Those maps are useful for getting through the day, but they are incomplete. They leave entire continents of possibility shaded in gray. They mark whole regions of your heart as unexplored, or worse, dangerous. And so, you live smaller than you are. You want less than you could. You become less than you already are. But something in you is finished with those incomplete maps. That is why you are here. That is why these words are finding you now. The call of the uncharted mind is not loud. It does not shout. It simply waits, patient and clear, like the first light of dawn on an empty horizon. It says, there is more. There is always more, and you are ready to see it. Imagine for a moment what it would feel like to walk through your own inner landscape with the eyes of a skilled cartographer. To name the rivers of emotion that have always flooded without warning. To climb the high ridges of your deepest beliefs, and finally see how they shape the valleys below. To enter the caves of old fear and discover that what once looked like solid rock is actually only shadow. To stand at the center of it all and realize that you are not the map. You are the one who draws it. You always have been. This is the freedom that waits on the other side of mapping. Not the freedom of escape, not the freedom of pretending everything is fine. The deeper freedom that comes when nothing inside you remains hidden from your own clear gaze. When you can look at every thought, every feeling, every buried story, and say with quiet authority, I see you. I know where you live on the map, and I choose what happens next. Over the hour that follows, we will gather the tools of the inner cartographer: gentle attention, honest witnessing, courageous curiosity. We will survey the known territory of your everyday mind, so you can see the patterns that have been steering you. Then we will step into the shadows, those vast regions that most people spend their lives avoiding. There, in the dark, we will discover that the dragons were never enemies. They were simply unmapped places, waiting for light. We will redraw the borders, not with force, but with the quiet precision of someone who finally understands the land. And at last, we will learn how to live the new map, how to walk through ordinary days with the open sky of freedom above us. You do not need special talent for this work. You only need the willingness to look. The map is already inside you, waiting to be drawn. The blank page is already in your hands. The compass has always pointed true. Chapter 1. The Invisible Landscape: Why Your Mind Remains a Mystery. You wake up each morning inside a country you have never fully mapped. The light comes through the window. Your feet touch the floor. Thoughts begin to move like weather across an unseen sky. And yet, almost none of this inner weather is under your conscious command. Scientists who study the mind tell us something startling. Roughly 95% of what happens inside you remains unconscious, unexamined, unmapped. 95%. That means the vast majority of the decisions you believe you are making, the feelings that rise and fall, the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what is possible, are being written by hands you cannot see, on parchment you have never held. This is the invisible landscape. It is not somewhere else. It is the ground you stand on every moment of every day. And because it is invisible, it shapes your entire life without your consent. Picture a man named David, who has spent 20 years in the same job he never truly chose. Every morning, he feels a quiet heaviness in his chest as he opens his laptop. He tells himself he is being responsible, that this is just how adult life works. But if you could unfold the map of his mind, you would see an old border drawn in childhood. Safety means staying small. Adventure is dangerous. Better the known cage than the unknown sky. That single line, drawn decades ago by a father who was afraid of risk, still quietly decides what David believes he is allowed to want. The map is outdated. It was never his to begin with. Yet, it continues to draw the borders of his days. Or consider the woman who keeps choosing partners who cannot meet her. She loves deeply. She gives everything. And still, she finds herself alone, wondering what is wrong with her. On the surface, she believes she simply has bad luck. Beneath the surface, in the unmapped territory, an early map still rules. Love means proving your worth by never asking for too much. If they leave, it is because you were never enough. The topography of that old wound shapes every new relationship before the first conversation even begins. She is not choosing poorly. She is simply following a map she does not know she is holding. These are not rare stories. They are the ordinary weather of human life. Look at your own days for a moment. Notice how certain thoughts arrive fully formed, already wearing the clothes of truth. Notice how certain emotions rise like sudden storms over particular subjects: money, success, intimacy, aging, being seen. Notice how you can want something with all your conscious heart and still find yourself quietly sabotaging it. That gap between what you consciously choose and what actually happens is the signature of the invisible landscape. The unconscious is not some distant basement. It is the very air you breathe, the soil under every step. And the cost of remaining unmapped is steep. You begin to live in repetition. The same arguments with different people. The same quiet dread on Sunday nights. The same ceiling that somehow always appears just when you start to rise. You suffer not only from what happens, but from the feeling that something essential is happening to you, rather than through you. There comes a day, perhaps it has already come, when you look around at the life you have built and feel like a stranger inside it. The furniture is yours. The calendar is yours. But the deeper currents feel foreign. You sense that someone else has been drawing the map all along, and you have simply been walking the roads they chose. This is the quiet tragedy of the unmapped mind. Not a dramatic catastrophe, but a slow dimming. A life lived 2 sizes too small. Possibilities that never quite reached the shore of reality because the map never allowed them landfall. Here be dragons, the old charts used to say at the edges of the known world. And so sailors stayed close to shore. Your mind has its own dragons. The fear of being too much, the terror of not being enough, the ancient belief that desire itself is dangerous. Those dragons guard blank continents of aliveness, creativity, and freedom. As long as the map remains unfinished, those dragons keep the borders closed. Yet, something beautiful is also true. The very fact that the landscape is invisible means it can be made visible. The moment you realize the map was drawn, you also realize it can be redrawn. That is the first spark of hope, and it is already glowing inside you right now. You are listening to these words. That listening is itself a first small act of cartography. You are beginning to turn toward the mystery, instead of living inside it as if it were solid ground. Imagine standing on a high ridge at dawn. Below you stretches an enormous valley, still wrapped in fog. You cannot yet see the rivers, or the forests, or the places where the land rises into unexpected beauty. But you know they are there. And for the first time, you understand that the fog is not permanent. It is simply the condition of never having looked carefully. You do not need to conquer the valley. You only need to walk into it with open eyes and a blank page, ready to receive what you find. This is the invitation of mental cartography. Not to become someone new, but to finally see the someone who has been here all along. The one who has been living inside an incomplete map and quietly longing for a larger sky. You begin by a simple, radical shift. You stop mistaking the mind for who you are and start treating it as territory. Territory can be surveyed. Territory can be named. Territory can be walked through with care until its secrets become known. The mind is not your enemy. It is not even your master. It is landscape, vast, layered, alive with weather and history and possibility. Some of that landscape was inherited. Some was carved by pain. Some was drawn in the soft pencil of early love and never updated. None of it is permanent. The moment you begin to see it as territory rather than identity, something softens. The dragons lose a little of their power. The blank spaces begin to shimmer with curiosity instead of fear. You do not have to map everything at once. You only have to begin. One true look is enough to change the quality of the entire journey. One honest question, what map am I walking right now, is enough to start the ink flowing across the blank page. So here you are, standing at the edge of the invisible landscape. The fog is still thick in places. The old borders still feel solid, but you are no longer completely lost inside them. You are beginning to know that a mystery can be entered, that what has been unconscious can become known, that the map which once felt like destiny is in truth only a drawing, and drawings can be revised. Chapter 2: Gathering the Tools, Becoming an Inner Cartographer. Something essential shifts the moment you decide the mind is not who you are, but the land you walk upon. You stop being the weather and become the one who watches the weather. You stop being the victim of every thought that storms through and become the curious explorer who simply notices where the storm is moving. This is the quiet identity change at the heart of mental cartography. You are no longer trapped inside the map. You are the one who holds the pen. And like every true explorer, you need tools. Not complicated instruments that require special training. Not expensive gear that only the enlightened possess. The tools of the inner cartographer are already living inside you. They have been waiting for the day you would finally pick them up and begin. The first and most essential tool is radical self-observation. It is the simple act of turning toward whatever is happening inside you, without trying to fix it, improve it, or push it away. Imagine you are sitting in a meeting and a familiar heat rises in your chest when someone questions your idea. The old map would have you defend, shrink, or silently rage. The new cartographer simply notices. Heat, tightness. A story rising that says, I am being diminished. You do not have to believe the story. You only have to see it clearly enough to mark it on the page. That seeing is already freedom beginning to breathe. Right beside observation lives the pause. The pause is the small clearing you create between what arises and how you respond. It is the space where the pen can actually touch the paper. Without the pause, life moves too fast for any mapping to happen. You are simply swept along the old rivers. With the pause, even one full breath, you step out of the current long enough to look around. You notice the slope of the emotion, the direction of the thought, the weather of the body. And in that tiny clearing, choice becomes possible again. Then there is journaling as map making. Not the kind of journaling that tries to solve everything or perform wisdom for some future reader. This is pure cartography. You sit with a blank page the way an explorer sits with blank parchment at the edge of unknown land. You write what is actually here. Right now, my chest is heavy. Thoughts about money are circling like birds. The old story that I will never have enough is walking across the field again. You name the rivers. You sketch the ridges. You mark the places where the fog is thick. Over days and weeks, the pages begin to show patterns. You start to see the recurring borders, the places where the same dragon always appears. The map grows more accurate, simply because you have been willing to draw what is true. Your body is the most reliable compass you will ever own. It does not lie. While the mind can tell elaborate stories about why you should stay or leave, say yes or no, the body simply reports the terrain. A constriction in the throat when you agree to something that violates you. A sudden lightness when you speak a difficult truth. A heaviness in the belly that has nothing to do with food and everything to do with an unspoken boundary. Learning to feel the body as living topography is one of the most powerful acts of cartography. You do not need to understand why the land is rising or falling. You only need to notice that it is, and to trust the noticing. Gentle self-inquiry questions are the walking stick that helps you move through difficult ground. They are not interrogations. They are soft, open invitations. What am I believing right now? Where do I feel this in my body? What would be here if this story were not true? These questions do not demand answers. They simply open the map a little wider. Sometimes, the only answer that comes is silence. That silence is also part of the territory. You mark it and keep walking. Even your dreams can become part of the mapping. At night, the unconscious often draws in bolder colors than the daytime mind allows. You do not need to become an expert in dream interpretation. You only need to pay a little more attention. When you wake with a fragment still glowing, you write it down. A house with no doors, a road that keeps disappearing, an animal that speaks. These images are not random. They are the deeper layers of the landscape, showing themselves when the controlling mind is finally quiet. Over time, they reveal blank spaces you did not know were blank. And then there is the simple, almost magical power of naming. To name something is to begin to free it. When you can say, "This is the old fear of being abandoned," or "This is the inherited belief that rest is laziness," the thing loses some of its invisible power. It becomes a feature on the map rather than the entire weather system. Naming is how the cartographer claims the right to draw. Without names, the land remains wild and overwhelming. With names, you can begin to chart a path through it. All of these tools work together the way a good explorer's kit works, each one supporting the others. Observation gives you something to pause with. The pause gives you space to journal. The body tells you where to look. Questions open the next ridge. Dreams reveal what the daylight mind still cannot see. Naming makes the whole territory speakable, and none of them require you to become someone other than who you already are. The attitude you carry while using these tools matters more than the tools themselves. The true cartographer walks with curiosity without judgment. You are not here to decide which parts of the landscape are good and which are bad. You are here to see what is actually present. Courage without force. You simply walk closer, notebook open, heart steady. Patience without resignation. Mapping takes time. Some regions reveal themselves slowly. Some fog banks lift only after many gentle visits. You keep returning, not because you are failing, but because the land is deep and you are finally willing to know it. There are beginner mistakes worth naming, so you can walk around them. The most common is trying to control instead of map. You notice a painful thought and immediately try to replace it with a better one. That is not cartography. That is still living inside the old map, just with new furniture. Mapping means allowing the thought to be fully seen before anything changes. Another mistake is using the tools as weapons against yourself. I should be more aware by now. Why is this still here after all this journaling? That voice is not the cartographer. That voice is another dragon wearing explorer's clothing. When you hear it, simply mark it on the page. Self-attack appearing again, then return to gentle seeing. Imagine a woman named Elena, who has spent years believing she is too sensitive. The old map said her feelings were a problem to be managed. One ordinary Tuesday, almost by accident, she begins to use the tools. She notices the tightness in her solar plexus when her partner speaks sharply. She pauses for one breath. She writes 3 lines in a small notebook. Heat. Old story that I am too much. Body wants to disappear. She places a hand on her belly and simply feels. That night, she dreams of a river that has been dammed for years. In the morning, she names it. This is the place where I stopped letting myself feel fully. Nothing dramatic happens that day, but something has shifted. For the first time, she is not the sensitivity. She is the one mapping it. The land is still the same, but she is no longer lost inside it. This is how it begins for all of us, not with grand revelations, but with small, honest acts of seeing. One observation, one pause, one true sentence on a page. The tools do not transform you overnight. They simply make the invisible visible, one contour line at a time. Chapter 3. Surveying the Known Territory. Mapping Thoughts, Emotions, and Habits. You have the tools now. The blank page waits. The compass of attention is steady in your hand. It is time to begin the actual surveying, not of distant unknown continents yet, but of the land you already walk every single day. The known territory, the familiar valleys and well-worn paths that make up the surface of your mind. Most people never survey even this surface. They live inside it the way a fish lives inside water, completely unaware of the medium that shapes every movement. But you are becoming a cartographer, and the first rule of good cartography is simple: map what is closest before you venture into the fog. So let us walk the known territory together, slowly, carefully, with open eyes. Begin with the recurring thought loops. These are the roads you travel so often that the ruts have become deep. You know them by the way they start without invitation. A single email arrives, and suddenly the old highway of, I am behind, I am failing, everyone else is ahead, opens up, and you are already halfway down it before you notice. Or you look in the mirror, and the familiar path of comparison begins its quiet march. These loops feel like who you are. They feel like truth, but they are simply well-traveled routes drawn long ago and never re-examined. Thought tracking is how you begin to map them. Throughout a single ordinary day, you simply notice when a loop starts, and you mark it, not with judgment, just with a quiet pencil stroke in the mind. The scarcity road again. Or, here comes the not enough highway. By evening, you may be surprised how many times you walk the same 3 or 4 roads. The map begins to show its main arteries. Then there is the emotional weather. Emotions are not random storms. They form patterns across the landscape of your days like seasonal weather systems. Some mornings, a low fog of anxiety rolls in before anything has even happened. Certain conversations always bring a sudden heat of defensiveness. Sunday evenings reliably deliver a particular gray heaviness. Emotional topography journaling is how you chart this weather. You do not need long entries. 3 or 4 times a day, you simply note the climate of the moment and where you feel it in the body. Mid-morning, tight chest, story of impending failure. After the call with my mother, warm expansion in the heart, then a quick contraction of guilt. Over a week, the pages begin to reveal ridges and valleys. You see that certain emotions always gather in the same low places. You start to recognize the early signs of a storm before it fully arrives. The weather is still the weather, but now it has contours. Now it can be navigated. Habits are the daily scripts that run on autopilot, the automatic footpaths you follow without ever looking at the ground. The way you reach for your phone the moment a difficult feeling appears. The way you say yes when your whole body is whispering no. The evening ritual of scrolling that quietly erases the last quiet hour of the day. Habit mapping is deceptively simple. You choose one small stretch of ordinary time, getting ready in the morning, the first hour after work, the moments before sleep, and you watch yourself the way a surveyor watches a river's course. You notice the sequence. First this thought, then this movement, then this small escape. You draw the path as it actually is, not as you wish it were. Many people discover that what they thought was a single habit is actually a whole chain of smaller, almost invisible steps. Once the chain is visible on the map, the places where a new path could begin also become visible. As you survey, you begin to notice trigger landmarks and safe harbors. Trigger landmarks are the specific places in outer life that reliably activate old inner terrain. A certain tone of voice, a particular kind of silence from someone you love, the sight of someone else's success. These landmarks are not the enemy. They are simply coordinates. When you mark them, this conversation style always opens the old abandonment valley. You stop being ambushed by them. Safe harbors are the opposite. The people, places, activities, or even times of day where your system naturally softens, where the map feels more open and breathable. Mapping both is essential. The cartographer needs to know where the dragons tend to appear and where fresh water can always be found. Something surprising happens as the surface map grows clearer. You discover both the accuracy and the distortion of the maps you have been living by. Some parts of your current map are remarkably precise. You really do feel more alive near trees. You really do shut down when criticized in public. That accuracy is a gift. It shows you the actual topography of your nervous system. At the same time, you begin to see the distortions, the places where the map claims this is always true, when it is only sometimes true, or true only under certain weather conditions. The map that says, "I am bad with money," may accurately describe a past season, yet it has quietly expanded to cover the entire continent of your financial life. The map that says, "People always leave," may have been drawn from 3 real losses and then applied to every new connection. Accurate enough to feel true, distorted enough to keep entire regions closed. And here comes the first major insight, quiet, but earth-shifting. Most of what you have been calling me is simply familiar territory that has never been questioned. The thought loops feel like your personality. The emotional weather feels like your temperament. The habits feel like your character. But they are landscape. Recurring, yes. Deeply worn, yes. Yet, still landscape. Not the living awareness that walks across it. When this insight lands, something softens in the chest. You realize you have been mistaking the well-known valleys for the whole of who you are. The map has been so familiar that you forgot it was a map in the first place. Creating an accurate surface map does something profoundly kind for you. It creates safety. When the known territory is finally charted, the mind no longer has to stay hypervigilant, scanning for every possible threat. Clarity replaces the low-grade confusion of living inside unexamined patterns. And this safety and clarity become the solid ground from which you will later dare to enter the shadows. You cannot skillfully explore the unconscious depths if the surface roads are still a mystery. Mapping the known is not a preliminary chore. It is the necessary foundation of all deeper freedom. Let us practice a small piece of surveying right now, together, while you listen. Keep your eyes open. Keep doing whatever you are doing. Simply let a gentle part of your attention turn inward for the next few moments. Notice the thoughts that are moving through right now, not the content so much as the quality of their movement. Are they circling? Rushing? Repeating? Just notice. Now, feel the emotional weather of this exact moment. Is there openness? Tightness? Neutrality? Where do you sense it most clearly in the body? No need to change anything. Simply mark it on the inner map. One clear noticing is enough. You have just surveyed a tiny square of known territory. That is how the great maps begin, one honest square at a time. Do this again later today, and tomorrow, and the day after. The known territory will start to reveal its true shape. You will see the loops, the weather systems, the automatic scripts with new eyes. And with every clear mark on the page, the strange sense of being a stranger in your own life begins to ease. You are no longer only living inside the map. You are learning its actual contours. Chapter 4. Venturing into the shadows, charting the unconscious depths. The known territory is now behind you, at least for a while. You have walked its roads. You have marked its weather. You have seen how much of what you once called me was simply familiar ground. Now, the path leads toward the true frontier, the place where the map grows faint, then blank. The place the old charts marked with the words, "Here be dragons." This is the unconscious, the shadow, the regions of yourself that were left unmapped for good reason, or so it once seemed. The repressed, the forgotten, the denied. The parts that carry the heat of shame, the cold of old grief, the sharp edge of rage you were never allowed to feel, the quiet ache of longing you learned to silence. These are not distant lands. They live just beyond the borders you drew long ago to keep yourself safe, and they have been drawing you ever since. Why were these regions left blank? Because at some point, they felt too dangerous to enter. Perhaps as a child you discovered that certain feelings made the adults around you withdraw or explode. So you built a wall and wrote, "Do not go here," on your inner map. Perhaps a culture taught you that some desires are selfish, some anger is unforgivable, some softness is weakness. The map absorbed those warnings. Or perhaps something simply hurt too much to stay with, and the only way to keep walking was to leave that valley uncharted. The blank spaces were never empty. They were full of what you could not yet hold. And so, the cartographers of childhood and survival marked them off limits. Those old marks still stand, until you choose to walk past them. You do not approach this territory the way a warrior storms a fortress. Force only deepens the fog. The true cartographer enters with a different kind of courage, the courage of gentleness. You walk slowly. You keep the lantern of compassionate attention low and steady. You remember that every shadow is still part of the same land that holds your light. You do not demand that the dragons step aside. You simply sit at the edge of their territory long enough for them to realize you have not come to destroy them. You have come to draw. The terrains you will find here are both universal and uniquely yours. There are the abandoned childhood maps, the places where a younger version of you still waits, holding an old story that was never updated. A man I once knew discovered, deep in his shadow work, a small boy who still believed that needing anything made him a burden. That belief had quietly shaped every relationship of his adult life. When he finally mapped that boy's world with tenderness instead of impatience, the adult map began to change. There are cultural inheritances, the silent rules about success, gender, money, or belonging that were drawn onto your mind before you could question them. There are trauma residues, the frozen lakes where something once too intense still sits, waiting to be felt at a pace the nervous system can handle. And there are the parts that carry unlived potential. The artist who was told to be practical, the wild voice that learned to speak softly, the fierce protector who was never allowed to protect. These are not monsters. They are unfinished maps. Here is the great paradox of the shadow. What you refuse to map ends up mapping you. The blank spaces do not stay blank. They send their weather across the known land. The unacknowledged rage appears as sudden irritability with the people you love. The denied longing shows up as a quiet emptiness no achievement can fill. The forgotten shame becomes a chronic sense that something is wrong with you. The unconscious does not disappear because you stop looking at it. It simply draws from the edges, shaping your choices, your relationships, your very sense of what is possible. The dragons you will not face become the invisible cartographers of your life. The only way to reclaim the pen is to walk toward them. And yet, every shadow contains gold. The rage you buried often holds the clean energy of healthy boundaries. The shame you hid frequently guards a deep sensitivity that, once welcomed, becomes profound empathy. The longing you silenced carries the exact coordinates of your unlived life. Even the darkest valleys hold intelligence, the intelligence of what was needed for survival then, and what is needed for freedom now. When you map a shadow with real care, you do not just make it visible. You free the energy that has been locked inside the blank space. That energy returns to you as vitality, as clarity, as a wider range of movement across the whole map of your life. Safety is not optional here. You never force the door. You never push past what your system can hold in a given moment. The cartographer always keeps a clear path back to known land. If the fog thickens too much, if the feeling becomes overwhelming, you simply return to the surface maps you have already drawn. You breathe. You feel your feet. You remember the safe harbors. You can always come back another day. Mapping the unconscious is not a single heroic expedition. It is a series of gentle, repeated visits. Some days, you only sit at the border and look. Some days, you take 3 careful steps in and then return. Both are true mapping. The land reveals itself at the pace of trust, not at the pace of ambition. There was a woman named Lila who spent years avoiding the shadow of her own ambition. Somewhere early, she had learned that wanting too much made her difficult, so she drew a careful border and lived a smaller life that looked humble and safe. One afternoon, while journaling, a single sentence rose. I am allowed to want the larger thing. The words terrified her. Her chest tightened. Old voices rose like storm clouds. Nonetheless, instead of forcing herself to push through, she simply mapped what was present. Fear here. Shame here. A young part that believes desire equals rejection. She placed a hand on her heart and stayed with the weather for 3 full minutes. Then she closed the notebook and went for a walk in known territory. The next day she returned, and the next. Over weeks, the border softened. The ambition did not become a monster. It became a river that had been dammed for too long. When she finally let it flow, it did not destroy her life. It irrigated it. This is how the work is done, not with dramatic breakthroughs every session, but with steady, kind attention. You bring the same tools you gathered earlier: observation, the pause, the body as compass, gentle naming, and you use them at the edge of the unknown. You do not need to understand everything you find. You only need to let it be seen. The act of seeing with compassion is itself the mapping. And every square of shadow that becomes known returns a piece of your life forced to you. You are not going into the shadows to become someone better. You are going so that nothing inside you has to remain in exile. The map of your mind is incomplete until these regions are included, and the freedom you long for cannot fully arrive while whole continents of yourself still live unmarked and unwelcomed. Chapter 5. Redrawing the Borders, Transforming Limiting Maps. You have walked the known roads. You have sat at the edge of the shadows and begun to draw what was once blank. The old maps are no longer invisible. They lie open before you, every worn path and false border finally visible in honest light. And something profound shifts in this moment of clear seeing. The cartographer who can see the map is no longer fully ruled by it. You now hold the pen. This is the active phase of mental cartography, the sacred work of redrawing. Redrawing is not erasure. You do not rip the old parchment and pretend the past never existed. You take the same land and draw new lines that honor what is true now. You dissolve the borders that have kept whole continents of your life closed. You open passages where walls once stood. You give the shadow regions a rightful place on the living map, so they no longer have to control you from the edges. There are many gentle ways to do this work. One of the most powerful is conscious reframing. You notice an old limiting sentence rising. I am not the kind of person who succeeds at this. And instead of arguing with it or believing it, you simply hold it up to the light of the larger map you are creating. You might say, quietly and without force, this was true on the old map. On the new map, I am still learning what is possible. The words do not have to feel completely true yet. They only have to be more accurate than the old border. Over time, the new line begins to take hold because it is rooted in present seeing rather than past fear. Sometimes, the work is dialogue with the shadow parts themselves. You sit with the part that carries shame or the part that still believes scarcity is the only safe country. You do not lecture it. You listen. What were you trying to protect me from? You ask. What do you need in order to rest? Often, these parts have been waiting years for someone to finally turn toward them with respect. When they are heard, they soften. The rigid border they once enforced begins to loosen. A man I know spent months in quiet conversation with the inner voice that always said, "Don't need too much." One day, that voice simply replied, "I was keeping you from the rejection I once felt. I see now that you can handle more." The border of "I must stay small" dissolved not through force, but through relationship. The body holds many of the old maps in its tissues. Somatic release is the cartography of the flesh. When you feel an old contraction rise, the tight throat of unexpressed truth, the heavy belly of ancient unworthiness, you stay with the sensation instead of analyzing it. You breathe into the place. You let the body complete whatever movement or sound or trembling was interrupted long ago. Tears may come. Heat may move. A long-held breath may finally leave. This is not drama. It is the land itself redrawing its contours from the inside. The false border softens because the energy that was frozen there is finally allowed to flow. Ritual completion can also free stuck territory. You might write a letter to the old map and then burn it, or walk a physical path that represents leaving an outdated belief behind. One woman created a small ceremony for the scarcity map she had inherited. She gathered every receipt and bill that carried the old fear, placed them in a bowl, and spoke aloud. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. I release you now. Abundance has room on this new map." Then she buried the ashes under a young tree. The outer act was simple. The inner shift was real. The land felt the new line being drawn. New beliefs are best installed not through mental repetition alone, but through embodied experience. You do not just tell yourself, "I am worthy." You create small, real moments where worthiness is lived. You ask for what you need and stay present with the vulnerability. You rest without earning it. You receive a compliment without deflecting. Each lived moment is a new mark on the map. The nervous system begins to trust the new border because it has walked it in real time. The "I can't" continent starts to shrink because you have taken actual steps across its old edge and discovered solid ground on the other side. All of this happens through small, consistent acts rather than grand overhauls. One honest reframe, one 5-minute dialogue, one body-based release, one tiny embodied choice that contradicts the old limit. These acts accumulate the way contour lines accumulate on a growing map. One day you look up and realize an entire false border has quietly disappeared. False borders dissolve most often around self-worth, scarcity, and the great continent of "I can't." The self-worth border might have said, "Love must be earned through perfect performance." Once mapped and met with compassion, it can be redrawn as, "I am already worthy of care, even when I am unfinished." The scarcity border that claimed, "There is never enough for me," can become, "I am allowed to receive and to create." The "I can't" continent, so vast for so many, begins to open when you stop treating its edge as absolute and start treating it as an old drawing that can be revised by living proof. Something alchemical occurs when unconscious material is brought fully into the light and given a new place on the map. The shame that once controlled you from the shadows becomes a source of humility and connection. The rage that was forbidden becomes clean protective energy. The longing that felt dangerous becomes the very compass pointing toward your unlived life. Nothing is wasted. Everything that was once exiled returns as usable force. The map does not become lighter by discarding the dark. It becomes truer and more powerful by including it wisely. Resistance will appear. Of course it will. Resistance is not a sign that you are doing the work wrong. It is a natural feature of the terrain. When you begin redrawing a long-held border, the old map often sends doubt, fatigue, sudden busyness, the quiet voice that says, "This is silly. Nothing is really changing." Meet resistance the same way you met the shadows, with curiosity rather than combat. The old border is sending its guardians. Of course, it has been protecting this line for decades. Then continue the small acts anyway, at a pace that honors the resistance without letting it stop the pen. Early signs that the map is changing are often subtle at first. You make a freer choice in a moment that used to feel automatic. A conversation that once triggered the old defensive road now feels spacious. Energy that had been locked in holding patterns begins to return as simple vitality. The inner weather grows quieter, not because storms never come, but because they no longer own the whole sky. You catch yourself assuming possibility where you once assumed limitation. These are the first contour lines of the new map appearing in daily life. Notice them. Celebrate them quietly. They are proof that the redrawing is real. You are not becoming a different person. You are becoming the same person with a more accurate, more spacious, more living map. The borders that once felt like solid rock are revealing themselves as pencil lines that can be softened, moved, or erased. And every time you redraw with honesty and care, a little more of your life force comes home. The work of transformation is not finished in a single chapter or a single season. It is the ongoing art of keeping the map current with the truth of who you are becoming. But something irreversible has already begun. Once you know you can redraw, you can never fully return to the old helplessness of being drawn by forces you cannot see. Chapter 6: Living the Map, Embodying Freedom in Everyday Life. The map is no longer only something you study. It is something you walk. The lines you have redrawn with such care now wait to be lived. This is the quiet turning point. Mapping without living remains only a drawing. Living the map is how the drawing becomes the living ground under your feet. You wake each morning not as a stranger, but as a cartographer who already knows the major ridges and rivers of the inner land. Morning orientation is the first simple practice of the living cartographer. Before the outer day rushes in, you take 1 or 2 quiet minutes to feel the current weather of your mind and body. You notice where the energy sits and which old borders might try to reassert themselves. You simply locate yourself on the map. Today, the old scarcity road feels close. I will watch for it. Or, there is more openness in the heart this morning. I will let myself move from there. This small act of orientation keeps you from sleepwalking into the day. You begin already awake inside your own terrain. As the hours unfold, midday course corrections become natural. Life will always present moments when an old path tries to pull you back. A critical email arrives. A loved one speaks in a tone that once opened the abandonment valley. You feel the familiar contraction rise. In the past, you might have been swept along the old road for hours. Now, you carry the pause like a reliable compass. You feel the pull. You name it gently. The old border is calling. Then you choose, sometimes in a single breath, whether to follow the familiar ruts or step onto the newer path you have drawn. Course correction is rarely dramatic. It is often just the quiet decision to speak a little more honestly, to rest for 10 minutes when the old map said you must keep producing, to ask for what you need, instead of swallowing the need. Each small correction strengthens the new lines, until they become the preferred roads. Evening map updates close the day with honesty and kindness. Before sleep, you spend a few minutes reviewing the terrain you walked. Where did the new borders hold? Where did an old dragon still manage to draw you off course? What surprised you? You write a few lines, or simply speak them inwardly. This is not self-judgment. It is cartography. The map stays current only when it is updated with the truth of lived experience. Over weeks, these evening notes reveal something beautiful. The new territory is no longer theoretical. It is becoming home. The deepest practice of living the map is learning to relate from the center rather than the edges. The center is the quiet awareness that watches the weather without becoming the weather. When you speak from the edges, from fear, from old shame, from the need to control, you shrink the map. When you speak from the center, even difficult conversations open space. You can feel the difference in your body. Edge speaking tightens the chest and narrows the breath. Center speaking leaves room around the words. In relationships, this shift changes everything. You stop needing the other person to complete your map or to stay inside your old borders. You meet them from the wider land you now inhabit. Conflict still arises, but it no longer feels like the entire continent is at stake. Choices become the daily ink of the living map. Every decision either expands or contracts the territory you can move in. Saying yes to something that lights a quiet aliveness expands the map. Saying yes out of guilt or fear shrinks it. Choosing rest when the old productivity border screams expands it. Choosing another hour of distraction when your body is asking for stillness shrinks it. You begin to feel these expansions and contractions almost physically. The map is no longer abstract. It lives in the nervous system as more space or less space, more ease or more constriction. Freedom becomes less a concept and more a felt sense of room to move. The experience of true freedom is quieter than most people expect. It is not constant euphoria. It is the steady confidence of someone who finally knows their own terrain. You still feel the full range of human weather, grief, joy, uncertainty, desire. But the weather no longer owns you. Reactivity softens. The gap between stimulus and response widens just enough for choice to appear. You notice old stories rising, and you can smile at them the way you smile at familiar landmarks you no longer have to visit. There is more space around everything. Conversations that once left you drained now leave you present. Work that once felt like a cage begins to reveal unexpected openings. Creativity returns not as forced effort, but as a natural movement of energy that was previously locked in holding the old borders. You navigate the outer world as an awakened cartographer. In relationships, you listen for the maps other people are living inside, without needing to redraw them for them. In work, you stop confusing busyness with worth and begin choosing the tasks that actually expand your living map. In creativity, you allow the blank spaces to remain blank long enough for something original to appear. When challenges come, and they will, you meet them as terrain rather than as personal failure. A setback is no longer proof that the old "I can't" continent was right. It is simply another valley to survey, another place where the map can be refined. The work is never finished. This is not a flaw in the process. It is the living beauty of it. The mind is not a static country. It is weather and seasons and slow tectonic shifts. New blank spaces will appear as you grow. Old dragons will occasionally test the new borders. The map will always need updating. The cartographer who understands this stops seeking a final perfect map and instead falls in love with the ongoing art of mapping itself. Freedom is not the day the map is complete. Freedom is the day you realize you can keep drawing for the rest of your life, and that the drawing itself is the freest thing you have ever done. Imagine a man named Elias, who once lived inside a map so small he could barely turn around. Self-worth was a narrow ridge. Rest was marked dangerous. Ambition was a forbidden continent. After months of careful cartography, he began to live the new lines. One ordinary Tuesday, he declined a project that would have cost him sleep and self-respect. The old map screamed. He felt the resistance rise like a familiar storm. But he paused, felt his feet, and simply said no. That evening, he walked in the park with no destination. The sky felt larger. His chest felt open. Nothing dramatic had happened, yet everything had changed. He was no longer visiting the new territory. He was living there. This is the vision that waits for you. Not a life free of weather, but a life in which the weather has room to move and you have room to choose. Mornings that begin with quiet orientation instead of immediate urgency. Days filled with small course corrections that keep you aligned with the wider land. Evenings of gentle updating that turn experience into wisdom. Relationships that feel like open country rather than contested borders. Work and creativity that expand rather than consume. A quiet confidence that comes from knowing the terrain of your own mind so well that even the dragons have become familiar landmarks rather than threats. You have redrawn the borders. Now you walk them until the walking itself rewires the land. The map is alive because you are alive inside it. Every conscious step is another line of freedom drawn in real time. Conclusion. You have walked a long and sacred path. You answered the quiet call of the uncharted mind. You stood at the edge of the invisible landscape and learned why so much of your life had remained a mystery. You gathered the simple, powerful tools of the inner cartographer: observation, the pause, the body as compass, the pen that names without judgment. You surveyed the known territory and watched familiar thought loops, emotional weather, and daily habits take clear shape on the page. You ventured into the shadows where the dragons lived and discovered that every blank space held gold. You redrew the borders that once felt like destiny. And finally, you began to live the new map, step by conscious step, until freedom started to feel like ordinary ground. All of this has been real. All of this has been necessary. And yet, here at the end of the journey, the deepest teaching waits. The map is not the territory. Even the most accurate, spacious, liberated map you will ever draw is still only a representation. It is a beautiful, living drawing of the land. It is not the land itself. The rivers of feeling, the mountains of belief, the valleys of shadow, the open plains of possibility, none of them are the map. They are the living territory of your being. The map helps you navigate. It keeps you from getting lost. It shows you where the old dragons used to stand and where new paths now open. But the map can never contain the vastness it points toward. True freedom is not the possession of a perfect map. True freedom is the living capacity to hold every map lightly, to update it freely when the land shifts, and, when the moment is ripe, to set the map down entirely and walk into pure presence, into the open awareness that has been exploring all along. Feel this for a moment. Everything you have mapped still exists. The thoughts still arise. The emotions still move. The old borders still send their weather from time to time. Nothing has been erased. What has changed is your relationship to the whole of it. You no longer live inside the drawing as if it were solid rock. You live as the one who can see the drawing, revise the drawing, and when ready, rest beyond every drawing in the simple, vast fact of being here. This is the quiet awe that remains when the last border softens. You look out across the continent of your own mind, its known roads, its reclaimed shadows, its newly opened continents, and you realize that the awareness that has been mapping is larger than anything it has ever mapped. That awareness was never lost. It was only temporarily identified with the weather, the roads, the dragons. Now, it knows itself as the sky in which all weather moves, the ground beneath every path, the silent space that holds every chart. You have not become someone new. You have remembered the one who was always capable of this journey. The dignity of that remembering is yours now. You are no longer a stranger in your own life. You are the cartographer and the living land itself. You will continue to draw. Life will keep presenting new blank spaces, new weather systems, new edges. Mapping remains a sacred and useful act, but you no longer have to mistake the map for home. Home is the awareness that can hold every map and still remain free. You already possess everything required for this freedom. The tools are inside you. The courage has already been proven by the fact that you walked this far. The vastness of your mind is not a problem to be solved. It is the very field in which freedom plays. Walk gently now. Keep the pen close, but hold it lightly. Let the map serve you rather than define you. And when the day comes, when even the most beautiful chart feels too small, set it down with gratitude and step into the open. The territory has always been waiting. It is larger than any chart. It is freer than any border. It is already here, breathing as you. You are the explorer. You are the land. You are the freedom that no map can ever fully contain. The sky is wide. The ground is yours. And the journey, in the deepest sense, has only just begun.